Who, me? Oh, I'd really rather not. Sure, sure. Okay. Hello, my name is Maisha. Oh, hello. Um, I am a former employee of a PWI, a predominantly white institution. Yes, well, I've been in recovery for almost a year. Let's see where to start. Well, by the time I graduated from high school in the 70s, the way had been paved for me to have a dream, to cast my vote unimpeded, and to ride the second wave of feminism, which included women of color. I believed I could achieve anything if I worked hard, played by the rules, and oh, yeah, black was beautiful. Fast forward 40 years later, I reluctantly walk into a psychiatrist's office to determine if I should take medication for depression. You see, I was diagnosed with persistent depressive disorder with anxious distress, currently mild, and panic disorder. I'd been seeing a therapist on and off over the years, but this was the first time that I'd ever been to see a psychiatrist. It was explained to me that the reason was because psychiatrists can prescribe medication and therapists can't. Well, I asked to be referred to a black psychiatrist, but there were none. I couldn't believe I had to bring yet another white mental health professional up to speed. Well, the doctor got right down to business, asking, "So what brings you here?" The truth is, it was a lot of little things that happened over time, but I summed it up in one sentence. There is nothing beautiful about being black in America. I told her that aside from the blessings of family and the measure of success that I had created by pulling myself up by my own bootstraps, my life had been a series of disappointments in response to obstacles, both visible and invisible. I told her that for a long time I thought it was my fault that 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 I wasn't good enough, didn't jump high enough, or run fast enough. She said, "That's interesting. Tell me more about that." So I told her about one of the many incidents that happened at the predominantly white institution where I had worked. I had been appointed project manager for an event that would bring greater visibility to the institution, furthering its good works in the Black and Brown communities whose mission it was to serve. There were less than a handful of people of color at the institution, so I was, wow, doubly honored to have been selected to lead the project. And because there was no clear path upward in the organization, I secretly hoped that more responsibility might portend, well, a promotion with more pay and benefits. Despite the event being just a few short months away, I was confident that with a strong team in place, the event would be successful. Well, I asked for volunteers from among my many coworkers and ended up with a team made up of all white women. Warning lights started flashing in my amygdala. Danger, danger. But I ignored them, thinking, we're all professionals here. It'll be fine. I looked forward to working with my team, and things got off to a really great start. We each volunteered to take on various tasks central to the success of the project. I thought it went without saying that as the project manager, I was the bottom line. But as the project got underway, things started happening, that made me wish I had made it plain. Who the bottom line was: me. For example, in preparation for our meetings, I would send out the agenda with a request for project reports. I mean, progress reports. The team members never seemed to be prepared to report on the tasks that they themselves had voluntarily taken on. Instead, I found myself, um, I'm sorry, instead, they found a way to pivot, asking me about the task that I was working on, how it was going, if they could help me by taking it off my hands. More than once, I had to thank them for their concern and assure them that I knew what I was doing and I could handle it. Another example, if I proposed an idea, it was dismissed, but later that same idea would be reintroduced as if they had thought of it. Members of the team often talked amongst themselves, making decisions without consulting me. I was on a need to know basis, and I was the project manager. It was clear. My team had no intention of ever reporting to me, didn't know how to take direction from a Black woman, and didn't know how not to be the boss. All of this made me feel, like I wasn't trusted to do my job. Well, I took my concerns to the higher ups, thinking that I would get their support because, well, they were the ones that had appointed me the project manager. I thought that they might, I don't know, maybe give guidance to my team about how to share leadership in the organization. That would have been helpful. But instead, I was blamed for bringing my concerns to them. I was accused of being brazen, impolite, and out of line. Well, I found myself getting more and more and more upset, mostly because I felt I wasn't being heard. I knew better than to raise my voice, though. The last thing I wanted was to be labeled an angry Black woman. I had seen this movie play out before, but then I had stayed quiet. This time, because of the awareness of bias raised by the Black Lives Matter movement, I was somehow I empowered. I somehow summoned up the courage to suggest that perhaps the reason for their treatment of me may be because I'm Black. Now, why did I go and say that? They were beyond insulted, accused me of being paranoid. After all, I'd been given the project manager position, right? Instead of seeking to understand the harm that was being done to me, my coworkers went on the offensive, protecting and comforting each other. White women shedding their white tears and loudly uh, rejecting the idea that racial bias might just be a part of the organization's culture. I was bewildered, unable to wrap my mind around how their bad behavior and disrespect was my fault. I was effectively put in my place again. I think that's when I first realized it was time to go. But I couldn't. I didn't have an exit plan in place. So I vowed to stay on until I could figure that piece of it out. But it was hard to put an exit plan together under such duress. Well, I was anxious and I started second guessing myself. I had panic attacks. I overate at lunch and often needed to stop for a drink, a Bloody Mary, after work to decompress before I got home. I was so stressed out that once I got home, I found that I had very little patience for my children, for my husband. I was snapping at them for little things that I would never have done before. Despite what was happening to me, somehow, through God's grace, I kept my eye on the prize. I was buoyed by the greater good that would be done for the community that the institution was serving, a community that I identified with. I know I sound like a martyr, but I was determined to see the project through to completion, and I did. The event was a huge success. Members of the community even said so, thanking me personally. And more importantly, we raised a lot of money for additional services for them. But you wouldn't have known it, not from the lackluster response, the higher ups who were acting like it was no big deal. That was the last straw. I quit. And that's when my recovery began. It is only now that I have come to understand that my former PWI, predominantly white institution, chose to uphold and protect the existing power structure over protecting me. It is only now that I have come to understand that my inability to achieve whatever I had hoped to achieve in this lifetime by this age,
Mm,
maybe it wasn't all my fault.
mm,
It is only now that I have come to understand that everything that happens in our country, from the cradle to the grave, supports and sustains institutional racism. It is only now that I've come to understand that racism has an impact on the mental health of Black people in this country, no matter how many firsts we've achieved or how much progress we've made. It is only now that I've come to understand that it's not always big, dramatic events like lynching or police killing unarmed Black people. No, it's a lot of little things that happen over time, almost daily, over generations, even. Things that happen to your mother and your mother's mother and your mother's mother's mother, all passed down to you. And one day you're in your 60s and traumatized and in a psychiatrist's office discussing dosage.
Hmm.
You're my last little girl, Mae Mobley. Viola, Viola Davis said that in The Help. Well, she didn't exactly say the white girl part, but I put that in there. But that's what she meant. I am kicking the habit of working for, raising up, sustaining these Mae Mobleys,
Mm.
these predominantly white institutions and businesses and organizations.
Mm.
Now I'm submitting to Black businesses and organizations and institutions. Oh, yeah. And Black, well, I'm making it beautiful again.
Mm.
You know, through education about the disease of racism, I now have the language to talk about what I've experienced, to name it, to call it out. Now it's your turn, white folks. It works if you work it. So work it because America is worth it. Thank you.
bravo.
Woo!
Bravo,
Hey,
Yvette.
woo!
Done.
Woo!
Powerful.
Yvette, show
Mm.
yourself so we can applaud you, please.
Yvette,
Oh,
Yvette.
oh,
Come back.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.